Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about a perfect example, a real world perfect example of how serious strength training and big heavy barbell work actually can be solutions to major problems that people argue about. Now, we know all the information is there about cancer. We know that people who lift weights get cancer at half the rate other people do, and if they get it, they survive at twice the rate. We know it stops osteoporosis. We've even seen the data that strong legs from resistance training even staves off things like Alzheimer's. All right, we're aware of all this medical stuff, but a lot of people say, well, what are other practical solutions to this? And I think one of them that's interesting has been proposed by Mark Ripito, and I'm going to cover that here with some other examples, but I'm going to go into a very specific multi-billion-dollar argument that the military has, and this involves our tax dollars. It actually, the logistic solution is strength training. And back to the point, though, with Mark Ripito has said this, that in his opinion, the military has got the things wrong. They have it wrong. They have this endurance-based paradigm going back to a previous era, but it's not really ideal. That if you took all of your infantry, all basic infantry and all branches of the military, and in basic training you put them on a proper strength training program with coaches, proper qualified coaches who know how to teach the barbell lifts, and you teach them all how to squat, how to deadlift, how to power clean, how to press, and you set strength standards minimums. And I agree with him. He says that, look, you could have the average infantry guy squatting 400 and deadlifting 500. All right, and you could do so without interfering with their endurance. They would need less endurance work because their work capacity will be higher. But as everyone knows, people who are stronger are harder to kill. People who are stronger have a much higher work capacity. In other words, their ability to hump gear at high speed increases. And I don't care how much endurance work you do. If you have a guy who only deadlifts 250 and you have a guy who deadlifts 500, and the guy who deadlifts 500 is only 10 pounds heavier, he will run circles around him as far as being able to pick up somebody and run with them, or the ability to carry more gear. An extra 20, 30 pounds of hardware on that guy won't be more difficult. It really won't. He'll be able to keep pace with the guy who's weaker, even carrying a heavier load out. And that's kind of a point we get to, because you guys remember CJ Allen, the elite powerlifter and strength and conditioning coach I interviewed years ago on this channel. You guys know what he's doing right now? Because I've stayed in touch with him. He's no longer in his doctoral program. He went and joined the Navy Special Forces. He is in Special Forces training right now to be a medic, to be a combat medic for them. And I've talked with him, and that's one of the things he's noted, that his background in powerlifting. Now, he lost a lot of weight. He dropped himself way down because he's over 6 foot tall. But he dropped himself way down by doing a bunch of running, but still maintained a solid strength base. He could still deadlift like 600 pounds. But what he found so far is that it has given him a tremendous advantage in the training schools. It's given him a tremendous advantage when it comes to being able to pick up another guy and throw him over his shoulders with both of them wearing full loadouts. He runs circles around the other guys doing that because he has a strength athlete background. He's pretty damn useful. It's made him a very, very valuable asset because he is really strong, that he has no trouble grabbing a wounded guy, throwing him over the shoulder with their armor and everything on, and just running with them. It's not a problem. You can do it all day long because of the work capacity of strength training. Now, as Ripto had pointed out, this is doable. A 500 deadlift would be nothing, and the reason for it, you have a bunch of young men. Everyone who goes into the military has to meet health qualifications. They're all healthy. They're all intact. None of them have made any sort of serious medical issue. Healthy, high testosterone young men who are put in a controlled environment where they have drill instructors screaming at them to keep them motivated, qualified strength coaches who can coach them, who you control their entire daily schedule, you control their food, you control their sleep. All right, this is the perfect environment to make guys really, really brutally strong, and it will change the nature of warfare. And I'll give you guys one example. I'm not going to get into all the other aspects. This is just one that I've realized because I have a firearm channel. I discuss the logistics problem our generals and our defense contractors argue about. And a lot of you guys may not be aware of this. There's been arguments, including General Mattis being involved, who's now Secretary of Defense, regarding abandoning the 5.56 NATO as the primary cartridge. Most infantry carry the M4 carbine. The civilian legal version of it is what you guys call the AR-15. It shoots a 5.56 NATO. The problems with it is that as things have changed in the world, we've noted the lack of stopping power. Tons of guys out in the field complain about having to shoot a guy 2 or 3 times before he goes down when the guy's shooting back. This is a reoccurring problem. Lack of stopping power. The 2 other problems. Technology has increased. Armor is more readily available. Armor solutions and armor technology have increased dramatically. I, as a civilian in America, own multiple sets of armor that will stop the best armor-piercing ammo currently out there out of the M4 carbine. It will stop it every single time. 100% success rate. It's $200 sets of armor. All right, we have that in America. Regular civilians and gun enthusiasts have armor that will bounce this stuff off all day long. The green tip they're using, one guy has tested it already, and he fired 100 rounds of green tip steel core 5.56 out of a saw on YouTube at one of these plates of the exact same brand and type I have, and it deflected all 100 of them. None of them pierced the armor. None of them. They all deflected off. The other problem is a maximum effective range. Maximum effective range, even with a Marine, and I'm using them as the example because they have the better marksmanship program as far as their basic infantry goes. They're generally better marksmen than the other branches. They're just trained better at it. The average Marine's maximum effective range with the M4 is 500 meters. Now keep in mind at 500 meters that bullet is relatively weak. So the problem they've had out in Afghanistan is that, it's a perfect example, out in Afghanistan, a lot of the Taliban have gotten a hold of all these old Russian surplus sniper rifles. They're cheap. They can get them for equivalent of about $100 out there now. And there's thousands and thousands of them. They all fire a 7.62 by 54 Russian. That thing will reach out 1,000 meters. It'll reach out 1,000 meters, and it'll actually defeat some body armor at closer ranges. It actually wreaks havoc on certain body armors. Has an effective range of 1 kilometer out of these cheap old rifles. Well, when your average guy has an M4 and his maximum effective range is half of that, you can see how this becomes a problem. And they've had to implement out there, again, needing designated marksmen running a 7.62 NATO. Well, this has created a problem. Like even General Mattis got into all this and wanted to replace the 5.56 for the Marine Corps with the 6.8 SPC. Just to try to resolve this problem, because the reason we've gone to the 5.56 was that using 7.62 NATO and its predecessor, the 30-06, the weight of the ammo, the weight of the rifles was really a problem all during World War I, World War II, the Korean War. This was a problem, and then the recoil on it, it kicked too hard. Our infantry no longer uses a full-powered rifle round. Like a lot of people are like, oh gosh, that's such a deadly round, like civilians who don't know anything about guns at all. It's not. It's an anemic round. It's been jokingly called a poodle shooter. They don't use a full-powered cartridge anymore. The M4 carbine and the M16 do not fire a full-powered rifle round. It's an intermediate round. So your problem there is that we have a round that's anemic, frequently doesn't put the target down, sometimes with multiple center mass hits, can't reach out effectively for past about 500 meters, easily defeated by armor. Well, a lot of money has been spent trying to resolve this, like the development of the 6.8 SPC to make something that's close to the same weight so that they could still put it in an M4 sized rifle. The ammo's only about 10% heavier, and that's what General Mattis wanted to do. General Mattis wanted to equip the Marine Corps with that. He felt the entire time he was a general they need to go over to that. Well, that's still not the solution either. And so there's these arguments back and forth, and they almost implemented buying something like 40,000 new rifles for the Army. Actually was going through this, and they just did a contract for it and then canceled the contract earlier this year because of the problem. They wanted to go back to 7.62 NATO. But the ammo weighs twice as much. The rifles are 1 to 2 pounds heavier. They ended up canceling it because, again, the guys we have in the field are just not strong enough to handle it. It's going to be a problem to put this sort of firepower in the hands of every single guy. It's going to be a problem. So here's the solution. You start looking at what the Army Marksmanship Unit is experimenting with other full power rounds now. They are experimenting with the 6.5 Creedmoor, the 260 Remington, and the 260 USA. They're all very, very similar. They're essentially the 7.62 NATO or 308 Winchester with a slightly smaller bullet that's more aerodynamic. All of these rounds out of a battle rifle sized rifle have a maximum effective range of at least 1,000 meters, a kilometer. But the ammo still weighs more and the rifles still weigh more. But there's your solution. The logistics of implementing that is very simple. You put all your guys on strength training programs, the entire infantry, all of them. Help put them on something like starting strength. Get them all strong. If you do that, this logistics argument about caliber that the military has been screaming about and fighting about and has spent millions and millions of dollars of money researching and developing and throwing ideas back out, testing ideas, testing them in the field, throwing them back out, this is the solution so they can quit wasting money on this and just put the 6.5 Creedmoor in. All right, problem solved. Problem solved. Now, people will argue, well, the average Army guy probably isn't skilled enough. Well, make the Army run the Marine Corps marksmanship program. There's your problem solved, because you take your average infantry and you get their squat up to 400 pounds and you get their deadlift up to 500 pounds, and this is easily doable. This is doable for every single one of them. You get their strength up to that levels by implementing barbell training as mandatory in basic. You then have the ability to equip every single soldier in the field with any sort of larger capacity rifle. It doesn't matter whether it's the M1A, which is in service now, SCAR Heavy, SR-25. It doesn't matter. Any of those 308 based rifles, switch them over to your 6.5 Creedmoor, rebarrel them, have the contractors make them. Since the Marines have learned the value of the ACOG, talk to Trigicon, talk to ACSS, and have them do the ACSS reticle. Set it for a 6.5 Creedmoor, mount it on any of those rifles, have it recalibrated to your 6.5 Creedmoor, and you will effectively, by simply making your guys stronger, you will be able to double the firepower. Every one of those guys becomes a force multiplier. Just like right now, any guy who has a marksman's rifle like an M1A or a SCAR Heavy is a force multiplier, because he's able to lay down twice the firepower per shot of everyone else in the unit. You turn every guy into a force multiplier. You take every one of them and they now have twice the stopping power, twice the killing power, better armor defeating capability, and they take their effective range from 500 meters out to 1,000 meters. Now, you put everyone on a proper marksmanship program. You put an ACOG on there with an ACSS BDC reticle that's been adjusted to 6.5 Creedmoor. And this solves the entire problem the military's been wasting billions of dollars trying to resolve just by getting guys squatting and deadlifting. Done. You just doubled the lethality of every single soldier in the field. With this one change, you removed all the logistics problems of the caliber war. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.